Welcome back to Tonight. We continue our discussion with political analysts Ebrahim, Fakir and Paul Berkowitz to discuss the state of coalitions in this country. But I understand that we have Aubrey on the line from Port Elizabeth. Aubrey, what's on your mind?
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, it's so disappointing that your analyst sounds like Sangomas, especially Mr. Fakir. He's saying absolutely nothing about Democratic Alliance, the wrongdoing of Democratic Alliance, breaking the rules of the coalition partners. Mr. Trollip, NDA, we know what happened with Bobani. They took it upon themselves to fire Mr. Bobani. Secondly, all these political parties didn't win any election, and what happened? They, as these small parties, decided to make a coalition implementing their manifestos, including DA. Democratic is taking every victory or every progress in municipality. They call media briefing without even consulting ACDP, COPE and other political parties, and claim the victory. And you want other political parties like EFF to keep quiet. I'm begging with Mr. Fakir, can you please behave, sir? Thank you.
All right, Aubrey, thanks for sharing your thoughts there, reflections from Aubrey. And in fact, the ACDP has been one of the parties that complained too about the level of acknowledgement that they were getting from the DA as marginal a vote as they bring, receive recognition.
Yeah, of course. That's their problem, though. They're part of this coalition. They signed up for it. They actually have a formal agreement, unlike the other parties. But Aubrey is obviously a party apparatchik, so we shouldn't be surprised in the lead up that, you know, party campaigners will be calling in talk shows and so forth. But that's besides the point. No one's for a moment arguing that the DA is completely innocent in all of this. Of course, Trollip ordered an investigation. There was a KPMG report, compromised as KPMG is. No doubt there was a report which they refused to make public. They're, of course, entirely inconsistent and woeful in how they apply their own internal rules. So the DA doesn't come out smelling roses. But what we're talking about here is about the formation of a government that all of them commonly agreed upon. Now what they're doing is that they're taking the rules and procedure of council, manipulating it, using the mask of race because it's an easy kind of appeal in a country like South Africa, and we've got fundamental problems around it. Of course, we all accept that. But to use that as a ruse to bring down a government that you don't like with respect to a campaign that's coming up in a few months' time is, of course, completely ill-advised.
What about, Ebrahim, to the extent that they've also complained about the level of service delivery that you will find in different parts of townships in Tshwane? Do you feel that perhaps the emphasis has not been equal?
That might be true, but, you know, this is the party that they elected. This is the party they put in government. They knew where the stress of their emphasis lie, and that might be true for Tshwane. But certainly for Port Elizabeth, the data is very different. Service deliveries had, in fact, improved under Trollip. You may not like it, but that's just factually true. The city's cleaner. They've got a better credit rating. They've got a bigger budget because they've got more money. They've got a great transfer from National Treasury. So you can't dispute those facts, you know, unless you want to make up your alternate reality, then of course you're welcome to that. But you can't, that argument's unsustainable.
Paul, how much of that matters? You know, the state of affairs and the state of governance, if it is in fact better than it was before, how much of that matters in this game of politics, which we seem to be very clearly stuck in? Because this doesn't sound like it has anything to do with governance. It has the mirage of being about governance, but certainly when one looks at the moves that are taking place, that's not the full impression you get.
Well, Cathy, if you're asking does it make a difference to the voters, that's harder to gauge. If we had regular, credible, scientific polls that asked, for example, the residents of Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, what's your feeling around the government of the day every month or every quarter, you'd be able to gauge the levels of satisfaction. Obviously, the DA are going to claim. Everything Ebrahim has said is true on a macroeconomic basis about the metro budget and the money being spent. A lot of other stuff, if you want to ask, do these facts or claims of facts matter to the politicians? It doesn't seem like it. If you look at the the council minutes from the end of May. The opposition parties in the council were complaining that the draft budget to be presented needed to have 80% spend on the poorest members of the metro. Trollop stood up and he said, in fact, we're spending 85% of the budget on the poor. It's a pro-poor budget. Neither side engaged with each other. Neither side was willing to acknowledge or concede and say, you know, that's actually right. That's something we can work with. Now, if the EFF and the DA are able to find each other in Johannesburg around the budget, and the budget is passed and there's compromises, then you can't really claim that there's a party difference on an ideological level per se, because what's preventing the same two parties having a successful coalition in other areas?
All right, Paul, I'm going to stop you right there. Deborah calling us from Orlando. Deborah, good evening. Deborah, I'm not sure you can hear me. You're speaking to Cathy. Good evening. All right, it seems that we've lost Deborah on the line. But on the issue of whether or not these coalitions are working, we also have the thoughts of Musi Maimane. He was speaking, of course, earlier on today. Let's listen to what his take is today as they go into that vote in Tshwane.
Just because you have a rogue councillor in Nelson Mandela Bay who leads the UDM doesn't mean that coalitions don't work. This notion that coalitions are unstable is wrong.
Is he being overly optimistic there?
Well, he's trying to save face, and as a politician, that's what he tried to do. It's not just that UDM who had a road councillor, they themselves had a road councillor, who they only wanted to discipline, by the way, when he decided that he doesn't want to vote for them. He had fraud charges or pending fraud charges.
Nothing was done.
And nothing was done. So Maimane is also entirely inconsistent in the way in which he applies the rules inside the DA itself. He should obviously be the last to talk. And here's the clincher, though, Cathy, unfortunately. Again, we keep talking about coalitions. It's an agenda that they would like to set, to say that coalitions are the future. Coalitions are not the future. We don't know. Until voters speak, we don't know whether they're the future or not.
Paul?
I agree with Ebrahim for a change, in that it suits the DA to talk up coalitions because the DA is approaching 50% from the bottom. And when I say approaching, we don't know how far or how close they'll get to 50%. Whereas a party like the ANC that has been accustomed for many years to governing or to ruling with absolute majorities on the local, the provincial and the national level is not that enamored with the idea of sharing power. And the EFF that doesn't seem to want to prioritize putting in the effort to creating a stable coalition is also not talking up coalitions. But the DA is the party that's had the greatest number of coalitions over the years, some of them successful, and it is the party's greatest chance at getting power on a provincial or a national level in the medium term.
All right, as we wrap up our conversation, how do we as voters approach what is happening now? What's the lens through which we should be looking at all of these developments as we go into an election year? Because I imagine it's only going to become more of a spectacle and the show will literally continue until we vote.
It's a healthy development in the sense that the focus now is on voters, and voters can now view politicians with deep skepticism, as they correctly should. And of course, they're entitled and should be left to make decisions as they choose. They must then decide whether they want to punish or reward politicians depending on their behavior. The one thing voters should not do is accept that we've got, and we should accept that we've got deep racial cleavages, deep racialized inequalities. There are ways in which we need to get out of this. But scratch beneath the surface of race when race is used for cheap politicking and for small incremental short-term advantage of individual politicians and their parties.
All right, final thought from you, Paul?
Cathy, I think I have a problem with how the debate is framed by the politicians around the voters, as if it's our responsibility or fault that the coalition is working or not working. Coalitions are inherently more unstable, yes, because there's many interests inside and outside the tent, but that's the nature of our system. So I don't know what voters need to be doing differently. Voters should vote with their conscience the way they want to do. If they want to stay away next year, I personally wouldn't like to see that, because it would be a lack of endorsement of our process. But if they want to switch parties, or if they want to punish or they want to reward, that's their prerogative. At the end of the day, our parties are still going to be left with the same challenges, and they're still going to have to do better and try harder and grow up. If they form coalitions or partnerships, then do it in an authentic and in a productive spirit.
All right. Well, this is a conversation that's far from over. I can tell you that.